How gangs control Rikers Island behind bars. The hidden empire. Behind the bars, behind the barbed wire, beyond the watchtowers lies a world most never see. A world where gangs aren't just surviving, they're running an empire. Today we're going deep inside Rikers Island to uncover how gangs control the jail from the inside out. Rikers isn't just America's most notorious jail. It's a battlefield. Every block, every dorm, every hallway has invisible borders, controlled not by correctional officers, but by gang crews like the Bloods, the Trinitarios, the Latin Kings, and the Crips. Decades of understaffing and corruption created a power vacuum, and gangs were quick to step in. With guards outnumbered and sometimes even complicit, the inmates who ran with gangs quickly became the ones who controlled food, protection, and even life or death. Inside Rikers, gangs decide who gets a bed and who sleeps on the floor. They decide who eats, who showers, and who gets beaten. Everything runs through their chain of command. And it doesn't stop at the gates. Their influence stretches out into the boroughs of New York City. From the moment you step foot inside, you're tested. If you don't claim a crew, you're vulnerable. Gangs control protection. Without them, you're a target. And that's how they maintain their power, by forcing inmates to choose a side or be crushed. At Rikers, discipline is enforced through fear. Rumors of punishment travel faster than whispers, and every confrontation serves as a reminder. Those who step out of line quickly learn the consequences. In this world, respect isn't asked for. It's taken. Phones, drugs, weapons. Everything flows in and out of Rikers through smuggling. Corrupt officers, sneaky visitors, even drones dropping packages. And once those tools are inside, gangs turn them into power. With a phone, a leader can control entire city blocks from the kings of the island. In the mid-1990s, the Bloods made Rikers their proving ground. Born on the streets, their influence seeped into the jail, where young recruits joined by the dozens. For many, aligning with the Bloods meant survival, but it also meant stepping into a violent chain of command. Alongside the Bloods came the Trinitarios, a Dominican-based crew. Their strength wasn't just in numbers, but in unity. Where other gangs fractured, the Trinitarios acted like a single unit, controlling entire housing units, and often deciding who could move freely and who couldn't. The Latin Kings, one of the oldest gangs in New York, carried their reputation into Rikers. Even when their numbers dwindled, the weight of their history gave them leverage. For some inmates, pledging loyalty to the Kings wasn't just protection, it was tradition. Where the Bloods grew, the Crips followed. Their presence inside Rikers was smaller in number but large in impact. Rivalries didn't stay outside. They were imported directly into the dorms, fueling constant tension between red and blue. Rikers is carved into invisible borders. One dorm might be dominated by the Bloods, the next by Trinitarios, another by Crips. Everyone inside knows the map, even if no one ever sees it written down. To cross the wrong line is to risk everything. For new arrivals, recruitment begins almost immediately. A gang might offer food, protection, even friendship. But every offer comes with a cost. Accept once, and you may be bound for the rest of your time inside. What makes these gangs powerful isn't just control inside. From a single contraband phone, leaders at Rikers can dictate moves in the city, ordering robberies, running drug deals, and settling street disputes. The jail doesn't stop the empire. It fuels it. But when gangs divide the jail, peace is never permanent. The rivalries explode into fights, riots, and lockdowns. When the island erupts, inside Rikers, it doesn't take much to ignite an explosion. A stare too long, a dispute over food, a debt unpaid. Small sparks have led to massive clashes, turning dorms into battlegrounds where correction officers scramble just to survive. Year after year, headlines tell the same story: riots, stabbings, lockdowns. But behind every headline is the same root cause: gang control. In 2008, one of the largest uprisings shook the island. A fight between rival crews escalated until dozens of inmates joined in. Officers reported being trapped, outnumbered, and unable to regain control for hours. It was a chilling reminder. In Rikers, the balance of power can shift in seconds. Correction officers walk into Rikers every day knowing they're outnumbered. Some describe it as walking into a war zone. When riots erupt, it's not just inmates at risk. Officers find themselves targets, sometimes abandoned behind locked gates, waiting for backup that comes too late. To restore control, lockdowns are enforced. Entire blocks sealed off, inmates confined to cells for days. But lockdowns don't solve the problem. They only delay the inevitable. Once the doors open again, tensions are even higher. When the fight started, there was nowhere to run. You had to stand with your crew or get crushed. Even if you didn't want to fight, you had no choice. That's how it works in here. For those inside, survival often means participation. Neutrality is rarely an option. One clash rarely stays isolated. When gangs strike in one dorm, word spreads instantly. Retaliation is planned, alliances are tested, and soon, violence ripples across the island. It's a cycle that correctional leadership has struggled to break for decades. Exposed to the outside world. For decades, gang dominance inside Rikers was treated like a dirty secret. But by the 2010s, the truth became impossible to ignore. Federal monitors, investigators, and civil rights attorneys began peeling back the walls, exposing just how much control had slipped away from the Department of Correction. Families of inmates filed lawsuits, claiming their loved ones were beaten, extorted, or left unprotected in dorms dominated by gangs. Each case painted the same picture: officers outnumbered, gangs in command, and a jail unable to guarantee basic safety. Even correction officers admitted the balance of power was tilted. For some, it was safer to cooperate than to confront. City officials faced growing backlash. Headlines blasted Rikers as a jail out of control, a place where gangs made the rules. Every incident, every lawsuit, every death brought new pressure to fix the system or close it altogether. In 2015, a sweeping settlement known as the Nunes Agreement forced Rikers into federal oversight. The agreement aimed to curb violence, stop excessive force by officers, and bring accountability to a system that had spiraled out of control. Across the city, voices grew louder. Advocacy groups, community leaders, and reformers demanded change, calling Rikers a symbol of a broken system. Their message was clear: the cycle of violence and control inside the jail could no longer be ignored. National media took notice. Rikers was no longer just a New York problem. It became a symbol of America's broken jail system. Reports showed that gangs weren't just surviving behind bars. They were thriving, while the city scrambled to explain why. The investigations, lawsuits, and public outrage all pointed to one conclusion: Rikers, in its current form, couldn't survive. Plans were drawn to close it. But while politicians debated, inside the walls, the gangs kept running the show, beyond the island. In 2017, New York City leaders announced a historic plan. Rikers Island would be shut down. The city promised to replace it with smaller borough-based jails, closer to courts and communities. For reformers, it was a victory decades in the making. Many officers, advocates, and even former inmates warned that shutting down Rikers was only a surface fix. The deeper problem, gang control, wouldn't vanish with new buildings. Gang leaders at Rikers don't just influence the jail. Their reach stretches into the boroughs, into neighborhoods, crews, and corners. The empire they built is portable. Whether in Rikers or another jail, their network survives. For thousands who passed through Rikers, the scars remain. Families fractured, communities shaken, and lives altered forever. The damage doesn't end at the water's edge. It ripples across New York City. Today, the city remains divided. Some argue that Rikers must close to end the cycle of violence. Others say shutting it down won't solve the deeper issues: gangs, poverty, and systemic neglect. As deadlines shift and budgets balloon, one question hangs heavy over New York. What comes after Rikers? Gangs have shaped Rikers Island for decades. They've turned dorms into territories, commissary into currency, and jails into kingdoms. Whether the island closes or not, their story is far from over. Because in the end, Rikers is more than a jail. It's a mirror, reflecting the failures, the struggles, and the unfinished fight for justice in America's largest city. The final word: Rikers Island has long been more than a jail. It became a kingdom behind bars, where gangs wrote the rules and the city paid the price. Now New York promises to close this place forever. But closing buildings won't close legacies. The scars, the stories, and the power forged inside these walls will live on. Because Rikers isn't just an island in the East River. It's a warning of what happens when neglect and power collide. And the question remains, when the gates finally shut, will New York be free of its shadow? Or will the empire simply move elsewhere? Subscribe for more untold stories.